Okay, Unit 3, Day 1. So this unit's kind of tough. We'll get through it. I just need you guys to take really good notes, pay really good attention through this whole unit, okay? So, rational expressions. The quotient of two polynomials, that is what a rational expression is. So like x over x squared. X is a polynomial, x squared is a polynomial. So that's a polynomial over a polynomial. 2x minus 4 over x minus 2. X squared plus 3x plus 2 over x plus 3. Those are all polynomials over polynomials, so those are all rational expressions. Okay? When a rational expression is in its simplest form, that's when the numerator and the denominator have no common divisor other than 1. So basically an example of that, if we have x squared minus 7x plus 12 over x squared minus 9, we can factor top and bottom. So I'm going to factor the top, you get x minus 4, x minus 3. Factor the bottom, get x plus 3, x minus 3. Those x minus 3's cancel because x minus 3 over x minus 3 is 1, so they're gone. And you're just left with x minus 4 and over x plus 3. That is the simplest form of that beginning rational expression. Okay, hopefully that kind of makes sense. Now let's go into simplifying rational expressions. So if we're looking at example A, we notice that there's no pluses or minuses in here. There is a negative sign, but there's no pluses or minuses. So first thing we're going to do on this is state the restrictions. Restrictions are when the denominator equals 0. Because you can't divide by 0. I'm not sure when you learned that. I feel like it's just knowledge you've always known. But you cannot divide by 0 because it doesn't make sense. Like you can't take a cookie and divide it into 0 pieces. That's just not possible. Like the least number of pieces you could divide it into is 1, and that would be the full thing. Right? You can't divide it into 0 pieces. So same thing here, you can't divide by 0. Okay? So we're going to see what makes the bottom equal 0. Well, if x equals 0, then that would make the bottom equal 0. And if y equals 0, same thing. So x cannot equal 0, and y can't equal 0. Those are the restrictions. We're done with restrictions for now, or for this one, okay? Then you're going to go through and we're going to split this up. So I'm going to put my numbers together. So I have the 28 over the negative 7. Put my x's together, put my y's together. Then I'm just going to simplify each one. So 28 divided by negative 7 is negative 4. X cubed divided by x squared is x. Y squared divided by y cubed is 1 over y. Then the last thing, I just need to write this as one fraction. So that's going to be negative 4x over y. And you're done. So there's the simplest form, and we also stated the restrictions. So we're done. Okay? Let's look at example C. So this one, we do have pluses and minuses in here. So when you have those, first thing you always check is that it's in standard form. If it's not in standard form, rewrite it. So like the top part of our rational expression was not in standard form, so I'm going to write that in standard form. So negative 4x plus 12 over x minus 9. X minus 9 is still just standard form. Okay, now we're going to factor everything. I'll go back for a second. We're going to factor the top, and we're going to factor the bottom before we state the restrictions. So if we factor the top, I can factor out a negative 4, and I'm left with x minus 3. Factor the bottom, x squared minus 9 factors to x minus 3, x plus 3. Okay, now at this point, this is where I state my restrictions. Again, so you're going to set your bottom pieces equal to 0, because that's what we don't want those to equal 0. So we're going to see, what do I have to plug into that x for that to equal 0? So I have x minus 3 cannot equal 0. X plus 3 cannot equal 0. So that means x cannot equal positive 3, and x cannot equal negative 3. Those are my restrictions. Then the very last thing I have to do is cancel common factors. So I look at the top, and I always am going to start with the left. I have the negative 4. That negative 4 cannot simplify with anything in the denominator, so we're fine there. X minus 3, I have an x minus 3 on top. I have an x minus 3 on bottom. Those cancel, and they're gone. We have nothing left on top, so I'm just left with a negative 4 over x plus 3. And that's the final answer there. So the restrictions are there, simplest form is there. All right? let's go to multiplying. So multiplying rational expressions. We have to find the product in the simplest form, and we have to state restrictions. Okay, so multiplying is essentially the same exact thing as simplifying. We just have more to simplify. Okay, so we're going to state the restrictions first in example A. So on example A, x cannot equal 0, y cannot equal 0, because that would make those denominators equal 0. Okay, so we're done with restrictions. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all my numbers on the front and then put my x and y. Numbers in the front, x, y. So I did that for my numerator, did it for the denominator. Now I'm going to multiply those out. So 3 times 7, 21, x squared, y. 5 times 12 is 60, and then the x cubed y. So I put the 21 and the 60 together, x squared and x cubed together, and my y's together. Then I'm just going to simplify these fractions. So 21 over 60. You have to look and see what goes into 21 and what goes into 60. Well, 3 goes into both of those. So that simplifies down to 7/12. One trick with your calculator, if you have the same calculators we use in class, if you put 21 over 60 into your calculator, you'll get 0.35. Then if you click math, enter, enter, that changes it to a fraction for you, so it simplifies those fractions for you. I shouldn't show you these tricks, but I think it makes life a little bit easier when you do know these. So I'm going to show them you. Okay, I'll go over that in class too, but if you just put the fraction in there, push math, enter, enter, it changes it to a fraction. Okay, so that 21 over 60 reduces to 7/20. X squared over x cubed is 1 over x, so the x just goes in the bottom. Y over y cancels, so we're just left with 7 over 20 minus, or 20x. And that's your answer there. Okay, now let's look at example B. So the first thing you're going to do is factor everything. Because we can't state restrictions yet because we need the factors before we can state them. So I'm going to factor the top first. I'm always just going to start on the top. So I'm going to start on the top left. I can factor out a 3, and you're left with x minus 2. Now, the x squared plus 5x plus 6, if you use the big X there, that factors down to x plus 2 and x plus 3. Okay? Now I'm going to look at the bottom. So x squared minus 4, that's the difference of squares. So that factors down to x plus 2, x minus 2. The right side, x squared plus 2x minus 3, factors down to x plus 3, x minus 1. Okay, so everything is completely factored. That's the first thing you always do, is factor everything as far as it can go. And we've done that, so we're good. Now, we need to state the restrictions. So I'm going to take each of these bottom factors and see what can I plug into for those x's to make those equal 0. So I have x plus 2 cannot equal 0, x minus 2 cannot equal 0, x plus 3 cannot equal 0, x minus 1 cannot equal 0. So that means x cannot equal -2, +2, -3, or +1. So those are all of my restrictions there. Okay. Once we have our restrictions, that's where we're going to start canceling out common factors. Again, I always just start with the 3. So the furthest left on the numerator. 3 cannot cancel with anything in the denominator because there's no numbers down there to simplify with, and there's not another 3, so it can't cancel. We have those x minus 2's on top and bottom. Those can cancel, they're gone. We have x plus 2 on top and bottom. Those cancel, and they're gone. We have x plus 3, top and bottom. Those cancel, those are gone. We're done with everything on the numerator, so then I can just write this as one fraction. So I have 3 over x minus 1, and that's your final answer. Okay, so it's basically you factor everything and you just simplify it down. That's what this is. Factor everything, find the restrictions, simplify it down, cancel out common factors. Okay? Now let's go into dividing. So dividing is basically the same thing as multiplying. We just have one added step. When you divide a number, so say we have, let's just go back to like dividing regular fractions. So if we have 1/3 divided by 1/9, Okay, when you divide by a fraction, you flip the second fraction and you multiply. So that really ends up being 9 over 3, which equals 3. And a way you can check that, if you don't believe me, that you can just flip and multiply it, you see how many times does 1/9 go into 1/3? It goes in 3 times, which is this, because 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9 equals 3/9, which equals 1/3. So that's where I got that 3 from. Okay, so basically, if I lost you, that's okay. The biggest thing I want you to know here is that you have to flip the second fraction when you're multiplying. When you're dividing, you have to flip the second fraction, change it to multiplication. I said that wrong. So when you're dividing, you flip the second fraction, change it to multiplication. Okay? And we're going to use that same logic when doing this one. So we have 7x over 4y cubed divided by 21x cubed over 8y. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that second fraction. So I have 7x over 4y cubed times 8y over 21x cubed. Once you do that and you've changed it to multiplication, you're going to do it the same way we did that multiplication one before. So first thing is state the restrictions. Okay, so it's x can't equal 0, y can't equal 0 for this case. And now we're going to go through and we're going to simplify this. So I moved all my numbers together, then my x's, then my y's. So 7 times 8 is 56. 4 times 21 is 84. We have the x on top, x cubed on bottom, y on top, y cubed on bottom. And we're going to simplify that 56 over 84. That simplifies down to 2/3. Again, you can just put that in your calculator, 56 over 84, math, enter, enter, and I'll put it out for you. X over x cubed is x squared in the denominator. That stays in the denominator because the 1x on top canceled with 1 on bottom, so you're left with 2 on bottom. Same with my y's. The 1y on top will cancel. I'm left with 2 on bottom. That's the simplest form. That's my final answer. Okay? Let's look at B. Again, we're going to do this the same way. We're going to flip that second fraction. So we flipped it, changed it to multiplication. Now I'm going to do it the same way I did my multiplication one before. I'm going to start by factoring everything in the numerator. So the x squared plus 5x plus 4 factors to x plus 4, x plus 1. 2x squared minus 6x factors down to 2x times x minus 3. Now we're going to go to the bottom. So x squared plus x minus 12 factors down to x plus 4, x minus 3. X squared minus 1 factors down to x plus 1, x minus 1. Now we're going to write our restrictions. So you see what will make that bottom equal 0. So you have x plus 4 can equal 0, x minus 3 can equal 0, x plus 1 can equal 0, x minus 1 can equal 0. So x can equal -4, 3, -1, or +1. We have our restrictions. Now we're just going to cancel out common factors, start left to right. So we have x plus 4 on top. We have an x plus 4 on bottom. Those cancel. We have x plus 1 on top. We also have an x plus 1 on bottom. Those cancel. We have the 2x on top. That can't cancel with anything, so that stays. And then we have the x minus 3. We have an x minus 3 on bottom. Those cancel. So you're just left with 2x over x minus 1. And that is your final answer there. Okay. Hopefully you're staying with me. I really apologize for how long this is. Okay. I'm not going to go over these ones. So complex fractions, these are essentially the same thing as dividing. So if you have x squared minus 1 over x squared minus 9 divided by x squared plus 3x minus 4 over x squared plus 8x plus 15, that's the same thing as just dividing, so you just do it the same exact way. I'll go over that more in class because I don't want to make this more than 15 minutes. So just flip the second fraction and treat it like multiplication. Make sure you take the quiz. Again, I'm sorry this is so long, but okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow.